So I think we can talk about the Leeds Huddersfield game, but that was a hot talking point after that game.
They're going to win. They're going to win a comp.
What I would say is a couple of things. One is when you have the majority of your back line back and players playing in the correct position, particularly your halves, you are a lot better than when you don't have them. So
and
that was one of the reasons why Leeds functioned as a unit a lot better than they had the last time, or the last two times they played. I also think it was quite odd that there was a double header at Headingley, and there was a reserve grade on beforehand game, Huddersfield against Leeds. Huddersfield decided to play, I think, 4 or 5 first team players. Two of them quite notable. Jay Connor was playing, and E Masters, big overseas signing for this year. They won 30-0. Clearly they're not playing against, reserve is a strange level. It's often not like against like, and there were, I think, half of Leeds' team were academy lads that were promoted up, but clearly they were far too good to play at that level, and yet the first team lose 54-0. So you would think that on the balance of the squad that is available to be selected, there's some imbalance there. I thought, and nobody needs to tell Ian Watson afterwards, that Huddersfield's performance arguably was the worst that I've seen this season in Super League, and came from the first Leeds try. All defensive structures, that is something that Ian Watson talks about more than anything else, fell apart. Now it was a good pass from Cameron Smith, it was a good line from Sam Walters. It wasn't good enough to walk straight through and score a try. And I would also say that measure of emotion that we talked about at the beginning of the game can go one of two ways. It places a huge weight of expectation on Leeds to do something to justify Rob being there and all that kind of thing. If Huddersfield had started in the first 10 minutes and quietened that, then the result could have been very different. Once Leeds had gone ahead, that wave then took them to a 50-point victory. Afterwards, Ian Watson gave an 11-minute press conference, which was very impressive from the point of view that he was honest, he was open, he didn't duck any question. He was clearly asked about what he was going to do in response. He was asked about the speculation regarding Justin Holbrook being sacked the morning before and how that might impact on Huddersfield having to put out a statement saying how dare you link him with us, and whether there is smoke without fire, or does that make his position even harder. He answered every question brilliantly. If you wanted copy for a newspaper, very hard to decide what to put in your match report because all of it was good. But then you listen back to it and everything is I. There's no we, there's no team, there's an insinuation of threat, but it's all about the coach. Now he might be protecting his players, but I just thought that was a bit odd, bearing in mind that, I don't mind him saying I still think this group can win a competition. It's hard to see it when you've played as abjectly as you have. That you are setting yourself up potentially for a later fall. But I just found it strange that it was all about what I was going to do, and I thought.
Yeah, I've not seen the press conference in full. I saw his interview on Sky post match, which was difficult to listen to and watch, to be honest. But I saw a response on social media about that, which you just mentioned, which does seem a little bit odd because I think they are in it collectively. Whether, as you say, he was trying to bear responsibility, but it seemed in the Sky interview he was putting it back on the players. And for me, very early in that game, it had all the hallmarks of a one-sided game, and I thought this could be very embarrassing for Huddersfield, which is what it turned out to be. Because it just looked like the players, I'm not saying they weren't interested, because there were still some try-saving tackles completed in that game, but they just didn't look like they were playing as a unit. They didn't look like they wanted to particularly be there, and that was, for me, more worrying. And I think that the conversation that we're having on Sky at the end of the game between the summarisers, well, how do you change it then? If you're not going to change your coach, how do you change it? Do you keep dropping players? Do you keep bringing players back in, chopping them around? He's already done that a lot. We've talked about a lot this season on the podcast about he doesn't appear to know his best team. Jake Connor, there were comments made in the week before the game, wasn't there, about his fitness, and it insinuated other things as well that we've sort of told him about that he needs to work on.
But again, why would you bring that up halfway through the season? If somebody's got a problem with their fitness, that's something you work on.
Is that because he came back from injury though?
Yeah.
But is that a legacy from the injury at the start of the year? But
I think it's the injury that he brought to the club.
Who wanted Jake Connor at Huddersfield?
Well, and also I think it's hard just to blame it on Jake Connor.
I'm not blaming Jake
No.
Connor.
I looked at Tuilagi here on Friday night, who we were consistently told last year by Ian Watson, possibly over-exaggerating it slightly, but had some fantastic performances at fullback, and we were told by Ian Watson on a regular basis he is the best fullback in the competition. Tuilagi here came on as an auxiliary hooker and looked anything other than happy in that role. Not because he didn't do it to the best of his ability, but that's not what he wants to be doing. He wants to be surveying things from the back where he can make his biggest impact, join the line when he's not there to defend in the middle of the field or distribute the ball to people running either side of him. And you just think halfway through the season, how have Huddersfield got to the point where someone who was such a good fit in square pegs and round holes. One of the reasons Leeds played well, they had a lot of round pegs in round holes. David Fussy-Tua coming back on the wing was fantastic. He's a winger, can't play anywhere else really. Austin and Caesar work really well together. They're not fit enough to play together often enough, but Austin dominates a game when Caesar is playing because the organisation role is done by one and the free role is done by the other. Ash Hanley moving to the wing made nearly or over 200 metres. That's what he does. And Richie Myler at fullback gives Leeds a different dimension. When everybody's fit, that's where they play. You get the impression with Huddersfield, when everybody's fit, I don't know where they should be playing.
No, but I mean, Blake Austin got man of the match, but we've seen him have some pretty ordinary games this season, and we've equally seen him play outstandingly well. And that must be frustrating for a coach. How do you get that level of consistency in performance?
Outstandingly well when Aidan Caesar's inside. And he played.
We're talking about a team that lost against Wakefield.
Absolutely.
So what was is that the main
games,
difference between the two performances? The fact that everyone was in the right position in one game, and I'm not saying that Wakefield wouldn't have won.
But I think
I don't want to blame that on.
No, I think that's important, but I don't think that's the only. I think it's what you do with you. They had a week off, and clearly Ian Watson was saying he hadn't seen anything that was telling him this performance was coming. That they trained really well. I think some clubs use that as a reset. You could tell that Leeds had, really helped by the fact that they had some star players back. Huddersfield looked like they got worse with the time off. Only they could answer what they did in that time. It looked contrasting.
They feel like they need to hit the reset button, because if the club is not going to make a change with the coach, and I'm not suggesting they should, by the way,
no.
But if that's not the way that they're going to go, because that sometimes going to have a short-term fix, but doesn't often fix the long-term problem. They feel like they need to hit the reset button and have very honest conversations amongst that squad about what's not occurring, what they need to improve on, and actually just try and take a bit of pressure off themselves, because no disrespect, but they've got a safety net at the moment of what, they're 6 points ahead, 8 points ahead of Wakefield at bottom, who are still struggling. They scored 12 points this week, but they're still struggling to score sufficient points. Without Wakefield being there, there will be huge pressure. And actually, if they just take a step back and say, look, we're not where we wanted to be at this stage, but they've got the flexibility to just try and go back to basics and work on trying to improve their performance. Who do they play this week? Wigan away, which is not going to be easy. But,
and then they've got Catalan away, so they've got two very
difficult games. But to some extent, does it relieve a little bit of pressure, because they're not expected to go into that game potentially and win?
What's going to be interesting is the 21 when it's announced, because you cannot make threats and then not carry them out. But also, every time you're putting Jake Connor and Isan Masters into the reserves, you've got some rebuilding to do. Then you're going to drop another couple of people maybe this week. I don't know who it will be. That's down to the club. At some point, you're going to need those players. It's going to be really hard.
It's very difficult. It's a difficult balancing act to drop people as well.
Yeah.
The same goes for referees, because there was a criticism when Stuart was in charge that we had 6 referees, 6 games in Super League, and nobody ever got dropped. People still think that referees don't get dropped. That's not the case. I mean, the group of referees this year has been pretty consistent in terms of their appointments, but in previous seasons they've chopped and changed almost weekly. But that's a difficult balancing act for a coach to try and manage that group, because you're gonna irritate somebody if they feel that they're them being dropped is unjustified. If they buy into why they're no longer in the team, then that's fine. But that's part of the art of coaching, isn't it? But I just think the players have got to look at themselves as well. It's not just the coach. They've got their own standards and expectations that when they take to the field.
And I also think that sometimes there is undue pressure by a coach, which may be intentional to get the best out of a player. When you see the result, you might think it's backfired. But Ollie Russell coming back into the team, suddenly there's a huge amount of pressure put on him by his coach, saying that's going to be the difference. He's going to turn it around. I'm so glad he's back. And you're going, well, he's coming back from an injury, and the one thing that we all know is that it takes time to come back from an injury, particularly to play at the very elite level. Same with Theo Farge. He's clearly a wonderful player. His career is littered with great moments, but he's coming back from a really serious injury. It's going to take him a while. But if the coach is then saying, "Oh, Theo's back in the team, so everything will be fine," it's undue pressure.
Yeah, it's not an easy one to answer, is it? They've got to break their next games down into looking at performance indicators as opposed to looking at the result, because, as I say, they've got that cushion at the moment, and break the game down into 5 and 10 minute chunks almost, or set after set after set. I know that's boring, and it's probably going back to this process of they're going back to sticking at the process. But
before we give you a yellow card, because you've got to go, Justin Holbrook is now on the market. As an owner of a club that you think might be underperforming, do you start finding his phone book and making contact?
Well, Widnes are looking for a new coach, aren't they? So I'm sure Justin Holbrook doesn't want to go back to.
Does it change that dynamic that somebody who is a proven winner in this competition, who desperately now needs to reprove himself, probably isn't going to get another head coaching job in the NRL for the foreseeable future, might want to come back here, prove the Gold Coast Titans wrong?
Possibly, who knows? I mean, with a club like Huddersfield that have got money, possibly it does change things, but you can't make decisions based on the availability of somebody. You've got to make a decision that's right for the club, and if a coach is not right for a club, or if a certain player is not right for a club, then it's a bigger picture, isn't it? That they've got to make those brave decisions.
Yeah, and I guess you've got to either take the whole route and say we've brought in Tony Smith to do a specific job, it's over a length of time, we've got players coming in and out of contract, we're going to leave him the space to do whatever he needs to do. You lose 7 games, you go, but we're not deviating from this track.
But I think
do you suddenly say at this point it's not good enough, the players that we've got in house are better than we're playing, therefore we can change?
And if you're going to make a change, you have to make a change, I would say, now, because the players are available for signing. As we've seen, we've got Cruz Leeman signing 4-year contract at Wigan next year. Sam Walters,
Jackie Chan.
O'Connor's just signed a 3-year deal at Leeds, etc. These players are now being tied up. So if you don't change your coach at this stage and bring somebody else new to shape his squad for next year, you end up in a situation whereby, a little bit like Darryl Powell had last year, you end up with a squad that's not yours, that you've suddenly got to turn around, which I would imagine is more challenging than trying to make changes now or plan changes for next season.
And if you bring in somebody now that can work with the group under no pressure of if you make the playoffs, great, if you don't, we've had such a bad season so far, it doesn't. But then you've got them all pre-season as well. Yeah,
I mean, the reverse argument to that would be, I would say, well, you brought Ian Watson in for given reasons.
Yes.
What suddenly really has changed to make him a supposed bad coach? He's not a bad coach.
No, he got them to a
results are not going his way. Yeah. We talked also before about them being a number of tight games early on in the season, and actually, if they'd converted 2 or 3 of those games, actually they're like on the cusp of the playoffs. So 2 or 3 games, the results of those can significantly change the view. And without jumping topic again, Warrington are supposedly in crisis, but are still second in the table.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to be in crisis second in the table.
As I said, Leeds lost to Wakefield in their last game, and then put 54 points against Huddersfield. So look, things can change very, very quickly in a week. And I think if I didn't particularly get Huddersfield's statement, by the way, in response. I thought that was just odd.
Yeah.
Almost better to just not make any comment. So, just I think keep things in-house, keep the conversations open and honest in-house, and work week to week, which is dead boring, isn't it? But that's ultimately how you turn things around.
It was a very un-Ian Watson-like performance.
Yeah.